This happened just a few months ago. I'm a nurse, and I work the night shift at a suburban hospital. The nights are usually quiet, but since my dad passed away, the silence felt heavy. I thought I could escape my grief there, surrounded by the bright lights and busy halls. On the third night, things shifted. I walked into a dimly lit patient wing, and the air felt thick. That's when I noticed Mrs. Thompson. She was supposed to be asleep, but her lips moved. I leaned closer. It sounded like whispering, but I couldn't make out any words. I left her room feeling uneasy but shook it off as just lack of sleep. The next few nights changed everything. I started hearing things. It was no longer just the soft whispers of Mrs. Thompson. I heard voices echoing in the empty spaces of the hospital. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Maybe I was just tired. On the fourth night, I noticed a man sitting in the waiting area. His face seemed familiar, but I couldn't place him. I felt chills creep down my spine. I glanced away for just a second, and when I looked back, he was gone. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I wanted to talk to Sarah, my coworker, about it. I rushed to the break room, but I hesitated. Something told me to keep it to myself. Was I losing it? My mind felt foggy. I could almost hear my father telling me to take it easy. Later, I checked on Mrs. Thompson again. I opened her door, expecting to see her there. But her bed was empty. Confused, I looked at the records. She hadn't been discharged. My hands shook as I called the front desk. They hadn't seen her either. Panic rose in my chest. The night dragged on. Every noise felt sharper, more sinister. I walked down a long corridor and thought I heard my dad's voice. I whipped around, but there was no one. I wanted to run. That's when it hit me. What if this hospital held secrets? I thought about my father and how I was trying to escape my pain. I felt trapped there and turned to leave. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. As I reached the exit, I looked back one last time. There he was, the man from the waiting area, staring at me. My heart raced. I didn't know what to say. I could feel the weight of his gaze. "Why are you here?" he asked. I felt a chill run through my body. But when I opened my mouth to respond, nothing came out. The hospital felt empty, and I realized I was alone. I finally stepped outside into the cool night air. It felt like a relief, but I still heard whispers in my mind. I thought about Mrs. Thompson. Had she ever been there at all? I shuddered at the thought. Now, I don't know what to think. The whispers linger. I can't forget that man and what he asked me. I don't think I'll go back. I just don't feel safe there anymore. The next morning, I decided to visit the hospital again. I didn't want to go, but I felt like I owed it to my job. I drove slowly, still shaken from last night. The hospital loomed in front of me, sterile and imposing. I told myself it was just my imagination, but my heart raced nonetheless. As I walked down the familiar halls, the weight of unanswered questions pressed against me. I headed to the nurse's station. Sarah was already there, flipping through charts. She looked up and smiled, but her eyes were tired. "Hey, you look like you've seen a ghost," she joked. I forced a laugh, but I didn't share what really happened. I told myself I needed to figure it out first. Later, during my rounds, I noticed the same dimly lit patient wing where I first saw Mrs. Thompson. This time, I felt compelled to go inside. I stepped into the room prepared to face whatever came next. But the bed was still empty. Confusion flooded my thoughts again. Where could she have gone? As I turned to leave, I felt a chill run down my spine. The air was suddenly colder, and the shadows seemed to lengthen. And then I heard a soft whisper, not from Mrs. Thompson but from behind me. I spun around, my pulse quickening, but the room was empty. I backed away, feeling a knot in my stomach. That's when I noticed the charts on the next bed. They weren't filled in. My heart sank. I saw the name at the top, Mark Lawson. I had been the one to take care of him before he passed weeks ago. The memory crashed over me like a wave, and I stumbled back. My mind raced. Something didn't add up. I rushed to find Sarah, needing her to help me make sense of this. I found her in the break room, pouring coffee. "Sarah," I said breathlessly. "We need to talk." Her smile faded. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, searching her face for understanding. "Have you seen anyone new around here lately?" "A woman named Thompson." She frowned. "No, I don't think so." "But why do you ask?" Before I could answer, a sudden noise interrupted us. A loud crash echoed down the hall. Both of us jumped, and I clutched the edge of the counter, heart racing. "What was that?" Sarah whispered. I shook my head. "I don't know. Let's check it out." Together, we stepped cautiously down the corridor. The lights flickered above us, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. As we approached the source of the noise, I felt that same feeling again, like something was lurking just outside my view. When we reached the door, I hesitated. A part of me felt like I shouldn't go inside, but curiosity urged me on. I pushed the door open, and my breath caught. That's when I saw it. The waiting room was filled with a fog, and in the center stood the man I had seen before, his face now clearer. I gasped, taking a step back. "What do you want?" I called out, but the words felt small in the heavy silence. He turned to me, and I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I realized he was no longer a stranger. He was connected to everything somehow. He was the link between my past, my father, and the whispers that haunted me. "Help me," he said, his voice echoing in the fog. Panic surged through me. I could feel my chest tighten. I turned to run, but I heard his voice again, stronger this time, calling my name. And just like that, everything went dark. I woke up gasping, my heart pounding hard against my ribs. The darkness clung to me, thick and suffocating. It took a moment to realize I was sprawled on the floor of the waiting room, my body aching from the impact. The fog had vanished, but the eerie silence remained. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice shaky. No answer. I struggled to my feet, feeling disoriented. The waiting room looked normal, too normal. My mind raced with questions. Had I passed out? Had I been dreaming? I needed answers. I stepped cautiously toward the hallway, each creaking floorboard beneath me amplifying the stillness. I needed to find Sarah. She'd know what was happening. I spotted a flickering light down the corridor and instinctively headed in that direction. As I walked, every shadow seemed to stretch and reach for me. I hesitated, glancing over my shoulder. There was nothing there, just the emptiness of the hospital. The chill returned, prickling at my skin. "Get it together," I muttered to myself. When I reached the nurse's station, Sarah was still missing. I felt a sudden surge of dread. Had she left? Or was something worse going on? I quickly glanced around, my breath becoming quicker. That's when I spotted a chart on the desk that didn't belong. I approached it cautiously. It was unfinished. The name scrawled at the top was one I'd seen before: Megan Cooper, a patient who had disappeared months ago. My stomach sank. I knew those stories, the whispers about her being linked to strange occurrences in the hospital. "What happened to you?" I whispered, tapping my fingers against the desk. The lights flickered again, and without warning, they went out. Panic flared as I fumbled for the nearby emergency button, my hands shaking. I pressed it, flooding the room in a dim red glow. I was alone. Dark thoughts spiraled in my head. Then I heard a soft, muffled cry coming from the dim corridor I had just left. It didn't sound like Sarah. My pulse raced as I stepped closer, peering around the corner. Megan?" I called out, voice trembling. But the only reply was silence. With no other choice, I walked toward the sound, my senses on high alert. The hallway was a maze of shadows, and the further I went, the more the cries drew me in. I stumbled across an open door. Cautiously, I leaned in. Inside, I found a room filled with medical equipment. The lights here were just as dim, but I could see the outlines of figures huddled together, women dressed in sterile gowns, their faces pale and drawn. The sight made the hair on my neck stand up. Then, one of them turned. "Help us," she said, her voice low and desperate. The moment froze. Something in her eyes mirrored the fear I felt. I wanted to turn and run, to escape the suffocating air. But I couldn't. Instead, I took a step inside the room, drawn in by the haunting familiarity. And then, the shadows around them began to shift. My breath caught. I knew I was stepping into something far beyond my understanding. "Get out!" shouted one of the figures, but it was too late. The door slammed shut behind me, sealing my fate. I turned around, but I was no longer alone. The figures in the room were closer now, their eyes wide and glimmering with fear. I stumbled back, my heart hammering as I realized they were not just shadows, they were real. The woman who had spoken stood with her arms trembling at her sides, desperation etched on her pale face. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice a shaky whisper. "I was looking for Sarah," I said, trying to explain, but the words felt hollow. Who was I kidding? I didn't know if Sarah was even still in the hospital. "Get out while you can," another woman urged, her voice growing frantic. "You can't stay here." Their panic heightened something deep inside me. I scanned the room, the shadows still shifting around us. I could feel an unseen presence closing in, pressing against my chest. I had to escape. But the door remained firmly shut. I rushed back to it and grasped the handle, turning it with all my might. Nothing. A sickening realization clawed at my gut. I was trapped. "Stop!" the first woman shouted, lunging toward me. "You'll draw attention." "Attention from who?" I snapped back, but part of me already knew the answer. Suddenly, a low moan vibrated through the air. It was coming from the shadows, a sound that felt alive and hungry. I looked around the room, noticing how the walls seemed to constrict like the folds of a dark cloak. "Please, just be quiet," one of the women implored, shaking her head. "The shadows are watching." I pressed my back against the door, breathing hard. "Shadows can't watch. It's just darkness." "No," she whispered fiercely. "It's more than that. It doesn't want to be found." My mind raced. I had heard the stories, the ghostly figures that roamed these halls, searching for souls to pull into despair. Is that what was happening here? Was I about to join them? As the moaning intensified, I felt something cold wrap around my ankle, the sharp chill igniting panic. "Help!" I screamed, yanking my foot free. The women reacted, their faces going pale as I stumbled over a medical cart. Instruments clanged to the floor, breaking the delicate tension. The shadows quivered, the air thick with a high-pitched hum that made my ears ache. Then I saw it, a dark, hulking form emerging from the far corner of the room. The shadows twisted around it, coiling like serpents as it moved closer. I could barely breathe. "Run!" the woman who had warned me shouted. "Now!" In a blur, I shoved the door with every ounce of strength I had, and this time it gave way. I burst out into the hallway, nearly tripping over my own feet as I darted away. I didn't look back. My instincts screamed at me to escape. I rushed past the nurse's station, glancing at the flickering lights that now felt like a warning. Somewhere in the depths of the hospital, I could still hear the muffled cries echoing, mingled with that terrible moan. I needed to find Sarah. But then, in the hallway, a figure stepped into my path. Sarah. She looked pale but alive, and relief flooded through me. Then I saw her eyes narrow in terror, not at me, but at something behind me. I turned slowly, dread creeping back in. The shadows had followed. I felt the air grow heavy as I turned around. The shadow loomed larger, stretching and writhing like a living thing. I could barely make out its features, but within the darkness, I saw eyes gleaming like shards of glass, burning with an intense hunger. "Sarah!" I shouted, desperation lacing my voice. "We have to get out of here." But she stood frozen, her expression caught between fear and confusion. "What is that?" she breathed, the color draining from her cheeks. I reached for her hand, pulling her closer. "I don't know, but we can't stay here." I felt the cold tendrils of the shadows reach out again, grazing my arm, and I recoiled, shivering. Instinct kicked in. I began to drag her down the hallway, but she hesitated. "The others, the ones I was with. They need help." I shook my head fiercely. "We can't help them. We have to think about ourselves, right now." But deep down, I felt guilty. I could hear the faint cries drifting from the room, the echo of despair. I couldn't just leave them behind. "What do we do?" I asked, panic creeping in. Her eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw the spark of determination. "We find the exit," she said firmly. "Then we help them. Together." Against my better judgment, I nodded. We turned back to the source of the cries, inching towards the darkened doorway I had just fled. When I reached it, I paused, glancing back at the ominous shadow. It was still there, waiting, as if it reveled in the fear it had created. "Let us hurry," I urged. We slipped inside the room, but there was no sign of the women who had warned me. Instead, the air was suffocating, filled with a swirling darkness that seemed to pulse with malevolence. "Where are they?" I whispered, dread settling in my stomach. Maybe Sarah began, but a shriek cut her off, a piercing sound that froze the blood in my veins. I turned sharply to the far corner and saw a woman I recognized. Her face was twisted in anguish as shadows tightened around her. "Help!" she cried, her voice cracking as the darkness enveloped her. Without thinking, I rushed forward. "No! Let her go!" I reached out, but the shadows recoiled and shot toward me, wrapping around my wrists. I struggled, panic surging through me. "Sarah!" I yelled, desperate. "Get her out of here!" But when I looked back, she was gone. "Sarah!" My heart raced as I searched the room's corners. Then I heard another noise, a low, rumbling growl mixed with a whisper. "Join us!" That voice slithered through the room, winding around me. The lights flickered above, casting erratic shadows that obscured any hope of finding my way. I needed to escape, but how could I when the darkness was reaching for me, eager to pull me into its depths? Then, just as I thought I might be consumed, I noticed something glimmering in the chaos, a small door set into the wall, half hidden by a curtain of shadow. Hope ignited within me. I had to reach it. But the shadows surged closer, eager to trap me, and suddenly, everything went dark. I had to fight through it. I had to survive. I gasped as the darkness swallowed me, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't let myself panic. I felt the cold tendrils of shadow creep across my skin, wrapping tightly around my wrists as if they had a mind of their own. I needed to break free. With a burst of adrenaline, I strained against the grip, feeling the shadows tighten. I stumbled backward, my foot hitting something solid. I glanced down and spotted a gurney, its wheels creaking under the pressure. "This isn't the end," I muttered to myself, shaking off the fear. I took a step toward the shimmering door, using the gurney for support. The shadows hissed, angry at my defiance. I focused on the door, its faint outline pulling me forward. I couldn't lose sight of it, it was my only chance. Just as I launched myself toward the door, the shadows surged again, and I felt a sharp pain on my arm as one of the tendrils lashed out, slicing through my skin. I yelped, stumbling forward. My eyes were fixed on the door, and I pushed through the pain, determined not to look back. I reached the door and grasped the handle. It felt warm against my cold fingers. My heart raced as I twisted it and pulled it open. A blinding light flooded the room, forcing the shadows to retreat, screeching in protest. I barely had time to take a breath before flinging myself through the doorway. I landed on a cold, hard floor, catching my breath as I rolled to my side. I looked back, half expecting to see the shadows coming after me, but the door slammed shut, the echoes of screams bouncing off the walls. I was in another corridor, illuminated by flickering overhead lights that buzzed eerily. My heart raced as I quickly got to my feet. This hallway felt familiar, yet something was off. The air was thick with an unsettling silence that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I took a few cautious steps forward, scanning the surroundings. I was certain I had been this way before, but the layout was somehow altered. The doors were different, their numbers unfamiliar, and the walls seemed to shift slightly as if they were alive. "Sarah!" I shouted again, my voice echoing down the hall. I felt a knot in my stomach. I needed to find her. I fumbled my phone from my pocket, hoping for a signal, but the screen just flickered and went dark. Then I heard it again, the whisper, sharper this time. "Join us." Panic washed over me as I turned on my heel, racing away from the sound. I pushed past door after door, each locked tight, taunting me with their silence. My breath quickened, fear clawing at my throat. I had to find her. Just when I thought I might be trapped forever, I saw a silhouette at the end of the hall. A figure emerged from the shadows, and my heart sank. It was a woman, but her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, similar to what I had seen before. "Help me," she said, her voice smooth and coaxing, drawing me in. I hesitated, feeling the pull of her gaze. She looked just like Sarah, but I couldn't be sure. That sensation of dread crept back in. I took a step back, ready to run, but then I heard another whisper, this one much softer. "Trust me." With a sickening lurch in my stomach, I realized this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I had to decide fast, but then the lights flickered wildly, plunging me into a fleeting darkness once more. I strained to see her face and felt the cold weight of the shadows creeping up behind me. Something told me the real nightmare was just beginning. I froze, caught in the crossfire of the glowing figure and the creeping shadows. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from her. The resemblance to Sarah was uncanny. I felt a flicker of hope, a chance to find her. I half expected her to reach for me, to help me escape this nightmare. But then I saw it. A glimmer of darkness snaking from the corners of her eyes, just for a second, revealing a sinister truth beneath that familiar facade. This was no angel. Was she even Sarah? "Please, you have to save me," she repeated, her voice oozing with desperation. The shadows writhed around me, snapping like hungry jaws. I stumbled back, and she stepped forward, her expression shifting from pleading to something colder. "Why should I trust you?" I shouted. "Because I am your only way out," she hissed, her lips curling into a slight smile. "But you must join us." Her words hung in the air like a noose. My heart raced as I struggled to comprehend what "join us" truly meant. The whispers grew louder, echoing around me, a cacophony of voices urging me to surrender. I sensed a change in the atmosphere, a heavy pulse of energy that made the walls vibrate. The shadows pressed closer, curling against my skin in icy caresses. I had to decide. Stay and see where this led, or flee into the unknown. "Enough!" I shouted, forcing my voice above the chaos. I turned on my heel and ran, desperate to escape her hypnotic gaze. I sprinted down the corridor, each step pounding beneath me like a warning bell. The flickering lights cast erratic patterns on the floor as I darted past doors. I could still hear her voice drifting after me, a sinister melody that promised wealth but meant danger. "Come back, you can't escape your fate." I didn't dare look back, but I could feel the shadows pursuing me, stretching and twisting, determined to pull me into their depths. I reached an intersection and skidded to a halt, panting heavily. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something gleaming on the floor, metallic and sharp. A scalpel. I bent to pick it up, hoping it could provide some kind of defense against whatever was hunting me. As soon as the blade was in my grip, the whispering grew frantic. "Join us, leave this world behind." The voices layered over each other, fraying my resolve. With my grip tightening around the scalpel, I chose a direction and raced down another hallway. This one felt colder, more foreboding. I pressed on, my heart pounding as echoes of laughter danced around me, taunting my every step. Suddenly, a door swung open ahead, revealing a dark room. I stopped, sensing movement inside. Should I hide? Or was this my way out? Before I could decide, a familiar silhouette stepped into the small light peeking through the door frame. "Please, you have to trust me," the voice called out, desperate and pleading. It was her again. As my heart sunk, I stumbled backward, knowing now there was no safe place left. Now, I understood. This was a game, and I was right in the middle of it. But the stakes were far too high. Who could I rely on when everyone seemed to want a piece of me? I forced myself to pivot away from the door, dread settling in my stomach. I could feel the shadows closing in, and the laughter echoed on every side. I had to keep running. Behind me, voices swelled, "Where are you going? You can't escape." And in the midst of it all, a realization hit me, heavy and clear. If I did not find Sarah soon, I might lose everything to the darkness that craved me. Desperation fueled my steps as I plunged back into the shadows, searching for the light I hoped still existed somewhere in this twisted place. I sprinted into the darkness, the scalpel clutched tightly in my hand. Adrenaline coursed through me, mingling with fear as I could still hear the mocking laughter behind me. I had no idea where I was going, but staying in one place felt like a death sentence. The shadows were not just following, they were waiting, hungry and eager. The corridor stretched out before me, long and unending. I chose a turn to the right, hoping for something different, anything that might lead me to safety. Doors lined the walls, all closed and silent. I pressed on, almost expecting the shadows to reveal their next trick at any moment. My breath hitched as I realized something. I had lost track of time. How long had I been running? Seconds felt like hours, and the oppressive silence weighed on me. The laughter had faded into whispers again, this time carrying names I recognized: my friends, my family. "Your mother misses you," a voice sighed. "Your best friend has been searching for you." I shook my head, trying to block them out. I couldn't let myself get distracted. Yet, the thought of seeing their faces again was like a flame licking at my weak resolve. "Don't listen," I whispered to myself, knowing I was still caught in the web of darkness. Then I saw a faint light flickering at the end of the corridor. I hesitated. It felt like a beacon. Was it real, or another trap? But the urge to reach it was overpowering. I rushed toward it, my heart racing with a mix of hope and dread. As I approached, the light grew brighter, illuminating a door that seemed ajar. A small room, filled with an unsettling calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos I had just escaped. I paused, letting the light wash over me. Just beyond the door, shadows clawed at the edges, warping the air like a mirage. Slipping through the threshold, I found myself in a small, sterile office. Papers were scattered everywhere, a desk lamp flickering precariously. It was clear someone had fled in a hurry. My instincts told me to search for anything useful. Then everything changed. I spotted a small whiteboard hung on the wall. Scribbled hastily in red marker were 3 words: "Trust no one." Chills rattled my spine. I turned sharply, scanning the room, half expecting to find someone hiding in the shadows. The words made it clear that if I wanted to survive, I had to be cautious. But how could I trust myself when I couldn't even trust my own eyes? Just then, there was a sound behind me: soft footsteps padding closer. My heart thundered as I whipped around, gripping the scalpel tighter. Any comfort I felt in this room evaporated. Who else was here? And that S when I saw her again, the eerie figure from before, though she looked different now. Gone was the desperate charm, replaced with an unsettling calm. You found me. She sang, her voice dripping with mirth. Now, let us play. My breath caught. She stepped forward, shadows swirling around her like a dark cloak. I was cornered, the scalpel feeling like a toothpick against the nightmare that approached. The whispers grew louder again, chanting in a frantic chorus, but now it was not about my family. It was about choices. Will you join us? She whispered, a smile creeping across her face, taunting me with the unknown. I had a choice to make. Embrace the darkness or fight back. But as I took a step back, the shadows lunged. I felt an icy grip around my ankles that threatened to pull me under. This time, there would be no escape without a fight. I had to decide to plunge deeper or break free. I had no time to dwell. Just as I was about to sink into the darkness, I thrust the scalpel forward, its blade aimed directly at the figure. Get back! I shouted, my voice trembling under the weight of fear. The woman laughed, a sharp, jarring sound that sent chills down my spine. You think that can hurt me? She taunted, gliding closer. The shadows entwined her like living tendrils, whispering sweet nothings in an unsettling hiss. I had to act. My instincts screamed at me to run, but the grip around my feet tightened, pulling me down. I screamed as I felt the cold seep through my shoes, creeping toward my legs like ice water. Desperation surged through me. I twisted my body, trying to shake myself free. With the last flicker of hope, I used every ounce of strength left in me. I kicked hard, aiming for the shadows that held me captive. The darkness shrieked as I made contact, releasing me from its hold, just for a moment. I stumbled backward, trying to regain my balance. Why do you resist? The woman asked, tilting her head like a curious cat. You could be one of us. Just let go. No. I shouted, still backing away from her. I want to become like you. But even my own voice sounded uncertain, as if the shadows could sense my wavering resolve. She grinned wider, her teeth gleaming in the flickering light. Then let us see how long you can keep it up. Her form began to dissipate, melting into the shadows, which swirled and thickened, blocking my path to the door. Panic surged. I couldn't stay in this room. I turned toward the only window, a small rectangle caked with grime. I knew I had to escape before the shadows found another way to grab hold of me. With all my might, I launched myself at it, desperate for freedom. The glass shattered. My heart raced as I leapt through, feeling the rush of cold night air meet my skin. I tumbled out, landing hard on the grass below. I gasped, my breath fogging in the chill. But that's when I realized I wasn't alone. Figures emerged from the darkness on the hospital grounds, faces shrouded in shadow. They moved closer, their movements fluid and eerie, as if they were gliding rather than walking. One raised a hand, pointing directly at me. Another wayward soul, a voice echoed, hollow and distant. I scrambled to my feet, glancing back at the window. The woman still lingered there, her laughter ringing out like a bell. You can't escape us. She called, a sinister smile plastered across her face. I turned back to the shadowy figures before me, dread pooling in my stomach. They could either help me or lead me deeper into the darkness that had claimed so many before me. Who are you? I demanded, raising the scalpel in a shaky hand. But they only chuckled in response, their voices intertwining like eerie song. The night air thickened, holding its breath. I had a choice: confront them or run deeper into the unknown. But as I took a step back, I heard the whisper again, chillingly familiar, trust no one. The shadows shifted, and I knew the game had only just begun. I turned and ran. The shadows seemed to pulse with my every breath, wrapping around my ankles like creeping ivy. I wasn't sure what lay ahead, but the air hummed with an oppressive energy that sent shivers down my spine. I could feel the figures behind me, their presence a heavy weight in the night's stillness. "Where are you going?" one of them called out, their voice smooth like silk but irrevocably chilling. "You can't leave us, not yet." With every stride, I felt the tendrils of darkness clawing at my skin, hungry and insatiable. But I refused to slow down. I had to find a way out. Adrenaline pushed me forward, urging me to escape the twisting maze of terror that surrounded me. I reached the hospital's front entrance, my mind racing with thoughts of Sarah. Where was she? Had I truly lost her in this twisted game of shadows? Just as I pushed against the heavy glass doors, they swung open, and I burst through, the cool night air hitting my face like a wave of clarity. But outside wasn't the sanctuary I had hoped for. The parking lot was drenched in darkness, and the moonlight barely pierced through the thick clouds overhead. I scanned the area and saw no sign of life, only the distant hum of the hospital machines echoing behind me. "Sarah!" I shouted, my voice cracking in the stillness. I felt the shadows drawing closer, almost as if they were weighing my words down, swallowing my calls. I took a step toward my car but froze. In the distance, the figure of a woman appeared, her silhouette shining under the pale moonlight. My heart leaped at the sight. "Sarah!" I cried out again, relief swirling in my chest. But as she drew nearer, that overwhelming sense of dread returned. This woman was not my friend. Though she wore the semblance of Sarah, her eyes glinted with an otherworldly hunger, a stark contrast to the warmth I had known. "You shouldn't have left," she cooed, her voice both familiar and foreign. I stumbled backward, realizing too late that I had been lured in. "You're not her," I shouted, pointing the scalpel toward her. Her lips twisted into the semblance of a smile. "But I am, in a way. Don't you want to find her? To help her? I'm not falling for your lies. Get away from me." My pulse quickened as panic threatened to take over. The shadows behind me surged forward. I could hear their whispers rising in a deafening crescendo, wrapping around my mind, blurring the line between reality and illusion. My vision darkened as I battled the cloud of fear overtaking me. With a defiant scream, I turned and bolted toward my car, fumbling for my keys. The shadows clawed at my ankles, but anger and desperation fueled my escape. For one fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of the hospital, the facade now warped and sinister, shifting like a living entity, darkness spilling out of every crack. I reached my car and swung the door open, desperately trying to start the engine. It roared to life, and I slammed my foot on the gas pedal without looking back. The tires screeched against the asphalt as I tore out of the hospital parking lot, leaving the laughter of the shadows behind. But as I drove, uncertainty gnawed at me. Had I really escaped? Did the darkness release me, or was it merely biding its time? Weeks passed. The night terrors followed me everywhere, shadows lurking in the corners of my vision. I still heard whispers echoing in the silence, and every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that hospital, chased by the darkness that had nearly consumed me. I think about Sarah often, about the choices I made that night. I can't go back. I moved to a different city, hoping to escape the whispers. But sometimes, when the night is particularly quiet, I feel a familiar chill creep up my spine. I wonder if Sarah is still there, in that house of shadows, searching for a way out. I wonder if I made the right choice. Did I truly escape, or am I just a lingering soul caught somewhere between light and darkness? It changed how I see things, that's for sure. I guess I'll never really know.